some hope to die.
By these 50 countries, differing so much in race and religion, in language and culture.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
Well, I know they're lying. They tricked me once, but they're not going to trick me twice. The time is now. Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. David Penn, your host. Glad to be with you as always for episode number 232. Coming to you this Tuesday night, the 26th of August at 7:30 p.m. Central Time on all the social media platforms. And before we start, please repost the links. We're getting so much more engagement because of this audience. This audience is reposting the links, leaving comments, hitting that like button. You know, we can overwhelm these algorithms if there's enough of us participating. I'm so pleased today to welcome back into the studio Representative Mike Wiener, who was just here, and I got to talking to him and I realized, well, we just didn't get to all of it, did we? So welcome back, Mike. So glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed being on the podcast before, and we covered a lot of different topics, but I felt that was more of an introduction in a lot of ways. So I was kind of looking forward to talking about some specific topics and issues, and I think we've got a nice list that we want to discuss
I
today.
get to choose like spinning a wheel. You have no idea what's coming up next. Are you down for the fair, man?
I am down for the fair.
What are you going to do at the fair?
I was there yesterday. I spent 3-4 hours at the House of Representative booth and just talked to people.
Was it well traveled? I mean, was there a high person count there?
You know, for a Monday, you can always expect the numbers to be a little bit down versus a weekend or whatever. But overall, it was a steady flow of people. It was very positive, I would say, in regards to the people's concerns and stuff that they brought up. The first time I did this was, I think it was my first year as a representative. And I remember very clearly walking up to the building and stopping and thinking, what did I just get myself into? Because this is the Metro. This is totally different than what I'm used to. And I'm going into the belly of the beast, so to speak, putting myself out there. What should I expect? And get to the booth and they kind of tell you what the protocol is, what you do. And the guy says, if any conversations get out of hand, just let us know and we'll help you out. We'll take care of it. If we have to act like there's a fake phone call, we'll do that. You know, I thought, now I'm really nervous because I'm not sure what to expect, but it went so well that first time. And yesterday was a good time as well.
Do you enjoy talking to the constituents when they come up?
Well, to me, it's almost like information gathering.
Intel.
It is. It absolutely is. When you have people
let me just say one thing. For those of you who are listening out of state, thank you so much. And people are coming in from all over the country. We got listeners in Australia, in England. We even have some people in Somaliland. I mean, we got people all over. So welcome. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for supporting the podcast. What are we talking about? We're talking about something called the Minnesota State Fair. And I was explaining to someone, fair, why do they call it a fair? Because it happens during fair weather. So we all gather, the community. This goes back into the old England, the old Norse traditions of gathering at the harvest season when the weather is fair. When I tell you the weather is fair this year, some years, Tanner, I'm sure, good morning, Tanner.
Good morning.
I'm sure you can relate to this. You go out to the fair, it's about 95 or 100 degrees with about 200% humidity. Yes, I exaggerate. It's the puffery of sales. It's miserable out there. But this year, this week, it's truly fair weather, is it not, sir?
It is absolutely beautiful. We got a chance to walk around yesterday. Like I said, smaller crowds, but there's times when you're down here and it is exactly like you're saying, and there's so many people. It is, it's almost stifling in a way.
Tanner, can you look up for me and just interject that? What is the average attendance annually of the Minnesota State Fair? Because for those of you who are from out of state, this is not some little farmer's market. This thing is a multi-million, I think millions of people attend this fair, right?
We were discussing this yesterday and somebody had thrown out the numbers. I wish I had written them down,
Mm.
but I think
Yearly, it's 1.8 million foot traffic while the fair is open. So that
1.8 million. Crazy.
yeah.
it's one of the biggest attended events, I believe, in the country,
The
isn't it?
the biggest record was 2019 where they had a total of 2.1 million that came through.
2.1 million people. And, from a political perspective, to have, I didn't know, and see, this is, I was telling Representative Wiener before the show, I would like to listen because there's a lot I need to learn. And if you're going to attend the fair, you are a Minnesotan. Maybe you came in from Iowa or from
Mhm.
North Dakota because people come from everywhere because it's a big farm equipment exhibition. It has a root in the agricultural industry of our region called the Upper Midwest,
Mm.
very similar to how my forebears called it the Ukraine, where the grain is grown. The Ukraine and the Midwest, kind of similar. Uh, but these people come from all over, and they come for many different reasons. But it is somewhat, would you agree with me, a gathering of the political clan of both sides?
There's so many. It's such a broad draw of people. I don't know how you could really break it down to why people show up. I think the food is a big draw. It's amazing. I don't go there for the food. I just don't. Although I like food, but that is not the draw for me. I do like going to talk to people. I do like the political aspect of it. But when I grew up, I was in 4-H. So you talk about the agricultural part of
Okay,
this.
4-H. We've
4-H.
got people that need to know what that is.
Sure, I apologize. I should have explained it. It's a group that primarily revolves around agriculture, and you compete in the local events, the local fairs. Like we have a fair in Todd County. You bring your uh, vegetables, your fruits, your grains, your animals, and you compete against other people in the county. And the best person or the best project, the best animal gets a purple ribbon. And that gets you access to the state fair. So you can bring your animals or whatever it is down to the state fair and you would compete down there. So most people, I shouldn't say most people, but there's a lot of people that don't even realize that that's even going on at the state fair.
A competition.
There's a competition going on for, excuse me.
It's an agribusiness competition, more or less.
There is a lot of, when we were just in line just to get in, we saw trailers of cows coming in. You know, most people don't pay attention to that. That's not what they're there for. But for 4-Hers, that's exactly what they're there for.
Well, I think if you are, just last night I was working in my garden. That's a family activity. And we're going for one last round of vegetables.
Sure.
And they're just babies, right? They're just little baby plants. And it's cold. And we're actually like taking the water out by hand and because they're in, pots and things like that. It takes a lot of skill to grow whatever it is, the best. This is a skill that people don't realize is a skill because there's not a lot of skill going on down in the local grocery store and just buying something. The people who grow it, actually know what they're doing. This is and it's rooted in thousands of years of human history.
Well, it was a way the competition was a way of producing the best. So say you had a display of grain, right? And you had, let's just say oats. You would have different heads of oats. The head had to be a certain size, the grain has to be a certain size, everything to fall into that criteria. So you, as a 4-H'er, grew a patch of grain, spend the time harvesting or tending it, making sure that there was no weeds, all of this stuff just to get the grain so you could display it at the fair. If you had an animal, you a lot of times, if it was a sheep or goats or a cow, you raised that from a calf or whatever to get to the point where you could bring it down to the fair. It was not just a small investment, it was a lifetime investment in some of these situations. And then it's more than just the animal. It's how you present the animal. It's the knowledge of the animal. It's bringing the animal out and training it correctly so that it can be shown, without jumping around or getting out of hand. There was a lot into it. And for me, it We learned Robert's Rules of Order in our meetings. We learned organization. We learned planning ahead. It was a good organization to be in. And I think it just to be part of that still and go down to the fair and see the kids compete. I think it's great. I really enjoy it. Uh,
We kinda miss this in the cities, that
Yeah.
there is a whole agriculture, and for those that missed it, uh, when Mike says Robert's Rules of Order, those are the rules of order you were using for your 4-H meetings, I presume,
yes, we were
and we use the same rules of order where?
not in the house.
Well, we use it in the BPOUs,
We
don't
do
we?
use it in the
Yes,
BPOUs.
we do.
So I thought that was great training for me years later because I was in 4-H, learned Robert's Rules of Order, went through DECA, Distributive Education Clubs of America in high school, and competed there. Was a sergeant at arms, so I had to know Robert's Rules of Order. And then you come down to House of Representatives, and we use Masons, which is a different set of rules, but some of the structure is still the same. So I tell my kids, pay attention to everything because what you may think is not a big deal right now, you may use in the future.
I just think it's, so noteworthy that a agriculture, um, organization that is there to strengthen the knowledge and the, uh, roots of the agriculture in the community actually is using such a potent, is using that format so potently to teach those young people really how to be effective politically. Is that a reasonable statement?
And I never thought of it as political when I was younger. It was just the way to keep the meetings ordered and structured. And that's what Roberts does. Is it political? No, I don't think the group itself is, but it teaches us to be good citizens, I would believe, and how to conduct ourselves in those situations. If you take that education that you learned in 4-H with Robert's Rules of Order and then go to a city council meeting or county commissioner meeting or anything like that, those generally, sometimes loosely, follow Robert's Rules of Order. You know, the meeting is conducted, called to order, conducted structurally, and it's kind of it's good prep for things further on in life. And
And
I
if we had enough Republicans participating in the party and in real activism, every county has county commissioners, right?
yes, they
And
do.
every city has a city council, for example, and there's a school board in every municipality, right? So every one of those meetings is basically going on right now, and nobody shows up to watch what these folks are doing. All you'd have to do, really, people say, well, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And I'm always saying, get involved in the party. But there's so many things we can do not being involved in the party. You could dedicate yourself to just going to your local school board meeting and you don't even have to say anything. You just need to sit there and change history. True or false statement?
Actually, I would say that the Democrats have figured out very well, quite a long time ago, that that's the prep work right there. Their activists, their people show up at school board meetings. They show up at city council meetings. They show up at county commissioner meetings. And a lot of times we as conservatives don't.
Why do you think that is? Well, what's going on with that?
I if you take in Minnesota, look at Minnesota. They had, like, Camp Wellstone, the Democrats did. Now, maybe it started before that, I couldn't tell you, but they have a training camp basically for activists, and they spread that out. They also use things, um, tools, I guess I would say, that are fostered in our government right now that are paid by taxpayers, and it promotes that in those Democrat circles. We don't do that. I don't think we plan ahead far enough. We don't have goals as Republicans in the state of Minnesota. Do we have a 5-year goal? Do we have a 10-year goal? Do we have a 20-year goal? I've never seen it if we do.
Have you ever
Ho
brought it up to your, like, constituents or not constituents, but, like, your
Leadership,
your
leadership.
leadership? Have
Mhm.
you ever brought this up to them?
We've talked about plans, simple plans, and if we don't write that down, what do we have?
Yeah.
Well, I've often heard the comment that things change, and therefore, our plan is to win the next election. But that doesn't tell us how we're gonna get there. If you don't write down if and maybe this goes back to my business upbringing, is you have to write this stuff down. I think David Ramsey talks about it all the time. Set some goals, write them down, review them on a regular basis. Are you making steps to get to those goals? And we as Republicans, I don't think we do that. And what's that saying? If you fail to plan, plan to fail.
That's a very common idea in business.
Right.
I mean,
But are
it-
we doing that in politics? The Democrats, I guarantee you, are looking further out than we are.
what do you think their end game is? Here in Minnesota? I mean, from you got a bird's eye view of it. That caucus, what is its end game? If you're what I'm hearing you say is you think, or it's your belief, at least anecdotally, that the Democrats are planning further out than the Republicans in this state, and that they're training to reach that goal. They have a training methodology. What's their end goal? What's their end game?
I think if you look back at it, and this is the history of Minnesota, which I have to be honest with you, I didn't know all of these things when I got elected because I asked the question very early on about the Iron Range. And I thought, why is the Iron Range so different than the rest of the state? When that area was developed, it was heavily influenced. I think it was Finlanders came in there, but it was primarily communist Marxist that controlled the northern part of the state. They plan ahead. They look ahead. They are way better at it than we are. This state, and we look at the ones around us, North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin, are all pretty conservative. And yet it comes to Minnesota, and here we're liberal. I don't think that was just a random chance. I think you have people, groups, who have been working on this for quite some time to turn this into a socialist, communist utopia. And that comes from the immigrants that came here 100 some years ago already. That fight never ends for some people. Most of us get caught up on our daily lives. We're just focused on surviving. But when you have goals and you have things that you're shooting for, working towards, and you can keep the average person working focused on those things, you're going to succeed sooner or later. If you don't have any goals and you don't have that average person focused or working towards them, you're going to end up with chaos. And I think that's why in the Republican Party, we don't have that focus or goal. That's why I think the Democrats are so much better organized because they have things planned out. Let's take, for instance, the um, redistricting.
Okay.
Look at the maps. Look at what's happening in Texas, California, all of these things right now. We haven't even talked about redistricting in the state of Minnesota as a caucus, as a party, as far as I know. Maybe if we have, it's been out of my purview. But by the time the next census rolls around, we will lose a congressional seat. We should have lost one last time. Our House and Senate districts will get bigger in greater Minnesota because of lack of population. Areas like the Iron Range, which the Democrats focused on for a long time because they wanted that as, I mean, the unions were huge to the Democrats, but they also understand that they're losing population up there. The Iron Range is not the issue anymore. The Democrats are focusing on the metro, and that's their primary area of population, and they can gerrymander this and work it around, or they've done a great job of it already, so that if we don't plan on making inroads into the metro, into the future here, I don't know that we'll have a Republican Party in the future.
Well, we had that a little bit of that conversation on your first visit,
Right.
and since you've been on here, we had on Republican, long-term Republican activist who's now running for the mayor in Minneapolis. His name's Laverne Turner. Get no press. Nobody knows who he is. He's associated with all kinds of conservatives that are in Minneapolis. There's a beachhead there. I'm not talking about Min GOP. These people are working, at least for what I heard, what I listened to in that interview. They've not gotten any support from Min GOP. Their support is grassroots in the community, and they're really asking for support. But before we get there, we're starting to talk about some party issues that are in every state. It doesn't matter what state you're in. There's a thing going on in your state. There's a large city in your state, wherever you are. There's a core city with a big population that is blue, blue, blue. Doesn't matter where it is. But it doesn't matter what, like we're in Texas. Like I just come back from Texas. I was in Texas over the last few days. Texas has got the same issues going on down there that we got going on up here. Only the Texas Republican Party is badass. But, they have a city there. There's a capital city. It's Austin. It's blue, 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 blue.
Mhm.
Houston, Texas. Huge population. Tanner, what's the population of Houston?
Let me check real quick.
It's a huge city, port city, important economic hub. It couldn't be any more blue. I mean, it's
Mhm.
Democrat to the man. What do you got down there?
2.39 million.
2.3. A small village in China.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm serious now. You don't hit the Richter scale in China at 2.4 million. It's a small city. Anyhow, let's start this. I want to talk about, in that wheel of what we're going to talk about, I want to talk about, because in full disclosure, Mike and I talked about a bunch of issues we might discuss today. And I've picked a couple I think are awesome. And I think one that's awesome is party politics, because this goes on everywhere. I'm saying it's going on in Texas. Let's listen. Tanner, if you could cue up this short with Governor Tim Walz just addressing a meeting of the DNC. I think it was right here in the Twin Cities, and I think it was just yesterday.
To be a diverse party. We are proud of the diversity of this country. We're not shying away from diversity as a strength and equity as a goal and inclusion being the air we breathe. That's what we should be doing. But what we have to be clear about is don't take the bait. It boggles my damn mind that in the midst of a military takeover of our cities and the attempt to go into others, the flaunting of the rule of law, the cruelness and the unconstitutional nature of the way they're attacking our neighbors, that the press finds the need to talk about, oh, there's a division in the Democratic Party. There's a division in my damn house and we're still married and things are good. That's life. That's life. We are strong. We are strong because we challenge each other. We are strong because we're held accountable. We're strong because we believe that there's a place for everyone here. Think of how easy it would be to be a damn Republican. Oh, what should I wear today? This stupid freaking red hat. What should I say today? I don't know. Just make sure it's cruel. Who do we listen to? That guy. Oh, the felon in the White House? Yeah, listen to him and that will be fine. Now he's talking about burning flags. He's going to have flag burning or whatever. Because he knows there's a hell of a lot of flags with his picture on it that are going to get burned. There's a whole lot of that kind of crap that people are sick of. And I have to tell you, we can have our internal decision-making, our internal healthy debates, but I refuse to believe we do not have the luxury to fight amongst ourselves while that thing sits in the White House. So I'm not telling anyone not to raise their voice. I'm not telling anyone to say, you are too damn old, man. Look at you. I'm fine with that. We can figure that part out. But I am willing to say each and every one of us are unified around the idea that this cruelty must end. This slow-rolling attempt at undermining democracy, and I always get in trouble for it, and I'll continue to say it. I don't think we do any favors when we don't name it. These are fascist policies meant to take away our... That is what they are. So for all of you here, I welcome you to Minnesota. I'm grateful you're here.
Well, that is in Minnesota, and that is the DNC summer meeting, and that is former vice presidential candidate and now Minnesota Governor Tim Walz opining about DEI should be the air we breathe, that Democrats can disagree with each other vociferously, but at the end of the day, to get rid of that thing and the fascist, cruel policies of the Republican Party, they will unify. And what I would like to talk on that wheel of what we can talk about, let's talk about the party and what's going on in the Minnesota State Party, because that's going on in Texas, it's going on in Oklahoma, it's going on in Tennessee. Every Republican Party and every Democratic Party all over the country has, I think, pretty much the same controversy going on.
I would there's just something that bothers me about this a lot.
Okay?
And I'm gonna go into there, and then we can talk about
Please, please.
he is up in arms about the President Trump, pulling the military into Washington, D.C. That's the only place that he can probably do that legally. Probably. Because D.C. is a federal district. What happened during COVID when our governor pulled the National Guard into areas in Minnesota here to maintain curfews and so forth? Wasn't he militarizing the police then? I mean, there's a level of hypocrisy here when he's saying the president's doing it, it's horrible, but when he did it, it was okay. What's the difference?
What is the difference?
Well, I think that's that double standard we see in politics all the time.
Well,
The rules apply to thee, but not to me.
but you could go down and I mean, I'm just thinking about how politically, you had the threat of the virus, which was a human health issue, and you have the threat of crime, which is a human health issue. So, these what always amazes me about politicians of both parties is their ability to take whatever and turn it to their own advantage. And there seems to be a kind of general lack of accountability to some kind of Republican, and I don't mean Republican in terms of party, but I mean a Republican standard in terms of we are in a republic. Even in this clip, you related to that. That bothered you. What bothered me is he starts talking about our democracy, our democracy. That's what we have done. And we get this also on the Republican side. Democracy. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a republic. So every time we don't challenge this, that we're losing our democracy, we're allowing a rewrite of history and of how we perceive the world that affects every man, woman, and child in the country. So I'm just going to say, if you're a leftist and you're listening to me, hey, you go back and look at the Constitution. It says every state is promised a Republican form of governance. It doesn't mean the Republican Party. It means the philosophy of republicanism. And here's what that is. We have some standard that exists besides 50% of the people plus one, therefore it's good. A democracy is 50% plus one, it's law, it's good. Republicans don't believe that. We believe there's some standard that is spiritual, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it. And if we leave that root, that historical root of our culture, like agriculture, we're going to lose our way.
Well, there's a lot of things in that clip that bothered me. That's one. But what you're saying, and people need to realize that, is when it comes to democracy, that 50% plus one, our founding fathers really did not like a democracy. They knew that mob rule was a bad thing. Thomas Jefferson basically said that, I believe, at one time, that said, a democracy is nothing more than mob rule, right? So when they talk about when he was talking about DEI and everything else, the mob can basically has no interest in the minorities. When you have 50% plus one, your minorities and your small groups can get crushed. A republic actually protects all groups just by how it functions, just how it's set up. A mob, it's a horrible form of government because the mobs are wrong sometimes more often than they're right. It's a dangerous position to be in. So you're right when they say we need to protect our democracy. That's like fingernails on a chalkboard every time I hear it. We are a republic. Say the Pledge of Allegiance. And what does it say right in there? And to the republic for which it stands, not democracy, and to the republic for which it stands. Every one of us should know that and realize that
That's
we're
a scam.
we're being lied to every time these people say we're going to protect our democracy. That's not what we are. We are a republic.
We have to be willing to say that. And of course, if you say it loudly enough and often enough, you're probably going to get accused of being a white Christo nationalist now, which he's kind of hinting at that when he calls the president that thing in the White House. That is called dehumanization. So if you're going to do something to somebody that is cruel, he's talking about cruelty. First thing you have to do is you have to dehumanize that. That's why people have names, very disparaging names for other groups of people. They dehumanize them.
Every ethnic cleansing that's taken place is basically set on that same premise. You dehumanize those people, whatever group you want, and then it's easier to carry out those atrocities.
What wasn't this guy just talking about lowering the temperature of the rhetoric after your colleagues were gunned
Yes.
down, one of them killed, one of your direct colleagues, someone you knew personally, correct?
Melissa Hortman and her husband. I did not know her husband. And then Senator Hoffman got shot, and his wife and daughter. Yes, we were going to lower the temperature. And this is what he comes back with. You know, even the one Minnesota mantra that he ran on as governor, how can you look at what he's saying and promoting as a Democrat and say, we're okay with this? I have a hard time of anybody in my area, especially, because they are the old DFL. They really are. They believe that there's farmer laborers in the party. They don't realize that it's come to this point. I don't like the hatred, the vitriol that's in that speech. I really don't. I think that's a horrible way to govern. And this is in our state. How is that Minnesota nice?
Well, because
He's-
he talked about our neighbors. He talked about the cruelty to our neighbors. Right there. That's the pitch to the established Minnesota nice culture, both on the Democrat side and the Republican side. We can't let these cruel policies impact our neighbors. We have to protect our neighbors. Do you agree with me that that's the pitch in there for the Minnesota nice?
Probably, but even reading the body language of the way I was going to say performed, but he did. The way he performed that speech, I have to wonder about the um, mental acuity, because there is obviously a hatred in there, and there's a mindset that drives a person to that passion. And that, I believe that's dangerous. We've seen these type of things from our governor. What's the next step? Where does this go when you're willing to, uh, like he said with the president, that thing in the White House, dehumanize? If you're willing to attack Republicans, if you've got that much vitriol, that much hatred in your body, that is not healthy at all. It is not good.
Not
for
healthy for our body politic.
Exactly. We can do better. And it is a horrible position, I think, when we look at our country. But some of this, I think, is focused. There's a bigger picture there again. If we not we, if you can destabilize a country, a nation, tear down the government that's in place and replace it with something, isn't that the communist goal? Isn't that the socialist goal? And you look at Governor Walz, who spent so much time in China, who has praised China and said that when it came to negotiations, I remember, I'm trying to remember which, they were talking about negotiations with something. And he said, I don't know that we have the moral superiority anymore. We have to look to a country like China to do that. You have a governor here that idolizes the CCP, that idolizes China. How many people were killed in China, murdered in China, to set that up into a communist nation?
Are you asking me a direct question?
I am
Because
asking.
I actually
I figured
And
you might know.
I'm somewhat of a, my whole life I've been involved with Asian philosophy, and and the estimates range up to 400 million if you put in the terminated pregnancies that are associated with the one-child policy. So 400 million people, but there's likely at least 60 million people that were politically eliminated at the beginning of that regime. And, I just went to the opening of a Vietnamese history exhibit at the History Museum in St. Paul. I went there a couple weekends ago. That community, the Vietnamese that work with the U.S. government that stayed
Mhm.
in Vietnam, were either re-educated or redistricted to another plane of existence. And same thing happened in Cambodia. There was the killing fields of Pol Pot. We had the uh, butchery of the Christians by the Bolsheviks at the beginning of the Soviet Union's period of time. So there is a repetitive when you talk about the protection of minority rights, which is so Republican in nature. That is the essence of republicanism, one of the key fundamentals. And then we have this mob rule plus one. And these are the two philosophies that are at play here. So 400 million people, call it 60 million, call it 6 million, call it 600,000, call it 60,000. There's this, I can't remember, I think it's a Bob Dylan thing, steal a little and they throw you in jail, steal a lot and they make you king. Kill one person, you end up in the penitentiary. Kill millions and millions of people and you may be famous forever, like Mao or Stalin or Hitler.
I think Stalin actually said that. Kill a few mil or kill a few thousand people, and it's a tragedy. Kill a few million, and it's a statistic.
Yeah, it's just, and
That mindset is horrible. And if you're going to look up to that type of government and those type of people like our governor does, and then watch this go on and understanding that I do believe in this country we have people here with ties to communist China, which
in our country and in our
in our
state.
state, right,
Okay.
who are looking to tear down our government and replace it with something very similar what they have in China right now. I don't want that. And it needs to be called out. It needs to be pointed out. When you can create that animosity between groups of people, and I'll point this out. We talked about this just briefly before the show. It was the 2020 Democrat platform. And it mentions in there different groups, the DEI, a lot of the woke stuff, environmental, everything in there. But something kind of rang a bell. And I was looking at it, but there's a news article, I think it was Washington Post mentioned it. And it said that whites are mentioned 15 times in that party platform. And every one of them is negative. What does that mean? It's not about bringing people together. It's not about inclusion. It's actually about breaking people apart. It's actually about causing friction and division between other people, other groups, so on and so forth. Look at the history. You talked about the Bolsheviks and in the revolution there. They broke people apart in order for them to take over the government. Divide and conquer. It's a military tactic. It's been going on since the beginning of time. This is also what's happening in the United States. Why do we look at everybody by race in this country? Either you're an American or you're not. Why do we call them African American or Mexican American or Chinese American? No, if you came here legally, if you have done what you're supposed to, if you believe in our republic form of government, you are an American
Citizen.
citizen.
When you take that oath,
Right.
you pledge allegiance.
When you still claim that you are a Mexican American and you are a citizen of the United States, that means you have divided loyalty. In our country, that used to be a big issue.
Well, so slow down. And we're getting
Yeah, we're going way off
Well,
track.
I want to get into the weeds on this one because I'm born Jewish. We have Jewish Americans.
Mhm.
We have a big controversy. We're going to talk about our party, the problems with our party, and then we're looking at this group of people that clearly have a quote unquote thing to unify against. We have Jewish Americans. They have a Jewish identity. They clearly have a loyalty to Israel. And I just want to add that to the list of Mexican American and Jewish American and all these different groups that, well, okay, so how do I think about it? I just want to share. You know, I'm an American citizen. My loyalty is to the United States of America. Okay, in my community, that's an inflammatory comment. It just is. Makes me a heretic, an apostate. But my love is for my Constitution, the value of my citizenship, and for the people here in this country. And what you're saying, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you a blast on this. You don't know this. When we did the last podcast, which is recent, I wanted to bring you back. Uh, you were talking about the way of life in your backyard. And, you were speaking about it in pretty idealistic terms, which I
Mhm.
think is great because that's how you think about it. And I was watching on my X some people from the inner city look at that as dog whistling as kind of a racist. And I said, no, it's not. Stop right there. And the person who did this, I'm not going to call him out by name. He's listening. He listens to the podcast. He said, no, I'm going to talk about him. And I welcome him on the podcast because we forged out a relationship on X by arguing, which, this is a la the Waltz idea that arguing is okay. And I'm okay with disagreement, but not with lying, with disagreement. But my point is, we've lost as a culture a commonality of understanding of what it is to be an American. And we've lost in the Republican Party of Minnesota what it means to be a Republican. So when our identities break down, how do they break down? Well, what you're saying is so true. We've been divided. And who divided us? And we're quite naive to believe it happened by accident. Because all you got to do is look at the Middle East or any other place where there's a colonial empire that's ruling people and controlling them with very small investments of resources. They've divided people into groups and put them at war with each other. And we have that here in Minnesota, in your state too, if you think about it. You got the left and right at war with each other. And then you got a battle inside the left wing, and you got a battle inside the right wing. So, setting that up, let's talk about these battles. You've already said you think it's very unhealthy for our body politic, and I'm agreeing with you. And I'm just refining it and saying it because we've lost a common definition of words, of ideas.
What what brings Republicans together? And we have a party platform for a reason. This is written up by the delegates. This is added and taken away from by the delegates. They decide what we are as a party.
The citizens
Right.
that participate in the process,
Yes.
not the hierarchy, not the elected officials, but the actual citizens like me who join party for God and country and then participate in the process. Correct?
It
Am I
is.
correct? Yes.
You're correct. And it is an interesting process. You can make changes or suggested changes to that party platform early on in the process as delegates. Comes to your county convention, you get to vote on them.
Oh, stop. Gotta stop. Gotta stop you. Because I'm going to have Dan Schultz on, the progenitor of the precinctstrategy.com,
Okay.
Thursday night. And Dan, we're going to talk about this Thursday. Dan is on me. He's riding me like Zorro because all he wants to do is talk about strategy. Dan's perspective is we all know what the problems are. And if we're going to solve them, there's only one way: citizen involvement in the process. So, what Representative Wiener is talking about is how can you become potent and effective to actually live out politics in your life. And, that's not watching Fox News. That's not complaining with your friends. That's actually going to your local meeting. We talked about it on the last podcast, how you actually went to your meeting, got involved, became a member of the party, and you woke up one day and you said, I'm going to run for office.
Mm-hmm.
We went through the process. Everybody can go back and look at the previous podcast. But for all of you listening out there, whatever state you're in, there is a way to get involved. Now, what I'm doing, you don't know this, but you're invited. I'm holding a meeting every 2 weeks here in SD 45. I'm bringing citizens in from all over the state. The next meeting is Tuesday night here, the 26th, tomorrow night, the 27th, at Devani's Pizzeria. on Highway 7 in Minnetonka. All who wish to come are invited, including if you're on the left, because we believe in dialogue, we believe in listening, we believe in citizen involvement. Even if you're on the left, I want you to get involved. Why? Because we are a self-governing republic. So, do you agree with me that we want more people involved in party politics?
Absolutely.
Then
Absolutely.
I'm going to let you
So,
invite everybody. You go ahead and invite your constituents to join the Republican Party in Todd County.
see, and I do that on a regular basis already. We have a radio station up there where we have open mic. I talk about these things. And our message, or my message up there, is you can't sit back and complain. And it goes back to what my dad said years ago. You just can't complain. Like, you have to get involved, right? You can't complain about it. You have to get involved. Um, I figured out the process, but I also have to share it and tell others that if you want to have a voice, you need to get involved as well.
You're willing to mentor citizens into party politics, to be a
Let's
teacher.
let's have those conversations, because I had flawed views on how the system worked as well. I thought some of these decisions were made about, in smoke-filled rooms and stuff like that. But really, if you want to have a change, it's going to take that grassroots effort to get involved. And it takes more people talking to your neighbors. And I always say the two things they tell us we're not supposed to talk about is politics and religion. Those are the things you should be talking about with your neighbors. And it doesn't have to be confrontational. Some of it we're going to learn that maybe our viewpoints are flawed. I've looked at things and said, yep, I did not view this accurately. Some of them has only reinforced my previous ideas and made me stronger and more firm on them, because I see the faults on the other side, which is always, we have to, it's like the saying that steel sharpens steel. If you're going to compete, if you're going to have discussions and get better at it, you need to be able to talk to somebody who is smarter than you. I think the Greek philosophers talked about, if you are a wrestler, you don't just wrestle somebody that you can beat all the time. You have to wrestle against somebody who's
You
better
got to take a
and
beating.
better and better,
You got to
because
take
you're
a
going to
beating.
learn.
You bet.
Exactly.
You're
And
making me
sometimes
laugh.
we're going to get schooled. That's fine.
You're making me laugh even harder inside. So, the what we're talking about is getting involved. And you said, Mike, something about smoke-filled rooms. To the extent that citizens, regular, everyday people, are not involved in the process and do not show up, yeah, things get figured out in back rooms.
You're exactly right. If people don't get involved at that level as delegates, showing up for conventions and so forth, there is a void, there's a gap. And then who gets to decide who the candidates are? It will be those smoke-filled rooms. It will be the people who are pulling the strings. And there are some. You see it in aspects of the party. There are people who say they want to be kingmakers. They want to donate. They want to dictate who the candidates are. Okay, but we have an endorsement process. Now, I do believe that part of our job as legislators is to help educate the delegates, because there are things, especially when it comes to winning statewide races, it takes a very active grassroots, but it does take donors. It takes money to make this happen. How do you bring both sides of this? And I think some of that is that conflict that we see in the party. You have the grassroots and you have the money, the money issues. I do believe, though, that if we as grassroots delegates become smarter and are able to articulate the message and say, these are the candidates we like for X, Y, and Z reasons, that goes a long ways. If we're willing to just show up, put an endorsement on them, and never talk about them, never put up a sign, never go out and talk at a town hall meeting or something like that in support of a candidate, we're kind of failing those candidates as well. It takes more than just becoming a delegate. It does take, so the financial part of it is the other aspect, which is the big money donors. We do need some of that. We do need money to win statewide races. the Democrats can outspend us by a large margin. It takes money to get things on the air. It takes money to get the message around. Take any of the governor candidates that are running right now. How do they get their message out there without a certain amount of money? That's difficult. That is very difficult. I do believe it takes more than just the grassroots. So, in the state of Minnesota, when we talk about this stuff, and maybe you disagree with me on the money issues, but we have 5 governor candidates right now, and I always look at the Buckley rule. You take the rightward most leaning candidate who is viable. I think there's some of these candidates that would probably be very right leaning, very Republican leaning, but can't fundraise. It is very difficult to get their message out there. It's very difficult to overcome those obstacles if you don't have teams to help you out. How do you do that? So, like I said, as I've been asked to endorse a couple different candidates that are running, and I said, I'm not going to do that. It is up to the grassroots. It is up to the delegates to decide who they want to represent them. I think as politicians, first of all, we're kind of patting ourselves on the back and thinking we're important by putting endorsements on there. Some of it is hitching our wagon to a horse because it might get us someplace where we want to go, position in a department or something like that. But I look at this and say the delegates decide. Whoever the delegates decide, whoever the delegates endorse for the candidate, I'm going to support.
Now, the rumor around the campfire is the hierarchy is already set. And I don't have any by 10 glosses or any tapes, but I've had many people tell me that they have been told. So it's hearsay. Don't know if it's true. Wasn't there. But the hearsay, the rumor mill, is that if the hierarchy, the establishment forces that really have sway, don't like who gets endorsed, they're going to primary for the statewide races. Have you heard that?
I've heard that.
Do you believe it?
Well, there's one candidate that has already come out and said if they don't get the endorsement, they will go to primary.
Well, there's 2. I've heard 2 say.
Is there 2?
Yes.
Okay, I know of 1.
Well, I know of 2 because I heard it with my own ears. It's still hearsay, and I could have got it wrong. Who knows? Maybe we were drinking. But I went to a candidate forum, and there was 2, actually.
Okay.
Prominent candidates amongst this 5 that said that they were not focused on the endorsement process. They're focused on the primary process because they believe they are going to get a primary challenge if they get the endorsement. So things are breaking down. And I'm going to just say, to go out on a limb here, Kendall Qualls, who's running, said he would honor the endorsement process. I heard him say that.
Okay.
But I will also say that in the 2024 cycle, he was among those that came out within a week after Royce White got the endorsement and supported Joe Frazier in his primary run. So, we're not quite together here in this area. And I'm going to let me go a step farther because this is pissing me off now when I think about it. I went to my 2023 SD 45 convention, and they brought Kendall Qualls in to talk about unity. And he told me that we could beat the Democrat. And of course, because I'm who I am, I felt like he was talking just to me, because Alex Plekish was on that board. Like, we just got to unify to beat the Democrat. We got to put aside our differences. If we agree, the Reagan rule, if we agree on 90% of it, why are we fighting with each other? It's all hands all hands across the water after all. And I thought, man, Kendall Qualls has got a point. He's got a point. Maybe I'm causing trouble. Maybe I got to figure out how to do my politics in a way. And I am moved by this because we're saying, how do we unify the party? That's what we're talking about. And I was stunned when he came out after he gave me that unity speech about we have to support the endorsed candidate. Then they didn't get the endorsement they liked, and whoa. So the party process is more wounded than ever before, not because of the actions necessarily of citizens who are getting in the process like you, but because of establishment response to it. And I think we talked on the last podcast that you had a little bit of that in your own backyard, did you not?
Well, I remember the first time somebody asked me if I would honor the endorsement. And I kind of stopped and thought, why wouldn't you? As a candidate, you're going to the delegates, hat in hand, and saying, I want your support. I want you to back me. I think I'm the best candidate to win here. I can bring X, Y, and Z to the table. I really want your endorsement. And then when you don't get it, you go, oh, well, I'm going to go to primary. To me, that's disingenuous. I would say that's lying. You were just looking at that as a tool to help your candidacy. You didn't put a lot of faith in it. Otherwise, you wouldn't go to primary. I feel like a candidate who says, I want the endorsement, but I'm just going to go to primary, I think they're lying to us. You don't really want the endorsement. It only helps you as a candidate. And if it doesn't go your way, you're just going to, if the endorsement doesn't go your way, you're just going to go to primary. I feel that's disingenuous. That's lying to us. I don't like it. There was a candidate that ran against an incumbent out in our area. And I didn't know this at the time before he was running, but he had said that he would go to primary if he didn't get the endorsement. And somebody said, well, you know, this candidate is going to do that. And I said, I wasn't aware of that. So they had the endorsement convention. There was no endorsement in that situation. It was tied. They couldn't come to a resolution. And afterwards, I called the person the following Monday and I said, don't go to primary. Don't do this. The bigger picture here is beating the Democrats. It's not fighting amongst ourselves. And that candidate really has been blackballed, got his name dragged through the mud because he went to primary. And now we have candidates who are saying, I'm going to run for governor. I want the endorsement, but I'm willing to go to primary anyways. So why do we look at this and say it's okay in this situation, but not in this situation? I think that consistency or lack of consistency causes some of this conflict in our party.
But how do we square the circle when the establishment does the same thing? That kind of makes it, it's one thing if you get these citizens rolling in and they don't like the outcome and then they run in the primary. Okay, but the process is controlled in large part by the party. In large part, the process is overviewed by party stalwarts. And when they run over the hill and say, we don't like this, and we're going to because that's how we started this part of the conversation. The rumor that they're saying, I'm talking about the party establishment, is saying, and I'm not in the room, and I'm sorry if you're listening, and you're welcome to come on the show and set me straight if I'm wrong. But why is there a widely spread rumor that even Representative Wiener has heard that if you don't get the candidates you want, you're going to primary them? So when the candidates hear this, I mean, really, if you're at the top of the party, you want to come in, Alex, if you want to come in and set us straight on this, we invite you in with respect. Or Tom Emmer, or Bobby Benson, or all the people, Kendall Qualls, or Michelle Benson, or Paul Gazelka, or Rudy Boschwitz, or Norm Coleman. Maybe I forgot some. Oh, if I forgot anybody, I'm so sorry. But all of you in the last cycle found a way not to support the process, and you're the people we look to for leadership, quote unquote, because you're the leaders of the party, quote unquote. How do we deal with that? Tell me how the grassroots, because there's going to be a lot of grassroots people listening now, and they're not happy about this because I'm involved with both sides. I got both sides I talk to, and that side that is firmly allied with what we would call the MAGA movement. They don't like this.
There was a candidate last midterm. Well, he was public about it, so I guess I will too. Doug Wardlow was running for attorney general, and he said, I don't believe the endorsement process is very effective because you haven't picked a candidate that would win statewide. And he said, I'm going straight to primary. I actually respect that because he said, I don't believe the endorsement has this value that you're putting on it. I'll go to primary. I to me, that's much more honest. Um, but there again, like I said, when you have this endorsement process and you say you want this endorsement, and then when you don't get it, you're just gonna go to primary, that's a lie. But now
Unless they
there is
tell the truth. What you're discriminating now. You're discriminating between those who say, "I'm going to honor the process," and then flip if they don't like the result. What I think I heard you say, using Doug Wardlow as an example, if they come out during then the delegates have a right to make a decision about the viability of the party process and say, "Now, this guy is really saying he doesn't really care. Maybe we shouldn't vote for him if we wanna strengthen the party process." Right?
you could look at it that way. He's saying that he doesn't believe the endorsement has the value, is kind of the way it was stated, and he wanted to go straight to primary. I can actually respect that. If you're, as a candidate, saying, "I want the endorsement, but then if I don't get it, I'll go to primary," there's a level of hypocrisy there
Oh,
to
so
me.
he didn't even go for the
He didn't even
endorsement.
go for the endorsement. I think there's a big difference there. Can you name me one representative, incumbent right now, or senator on our side who didn't seek the endorsement?
I can't. Can you?
I can't either. Every one of them has put a value on it. And yet, inside our party right now, there are people who are saying we need to get rid of the endorsement process. Some representatives, some senators.
Or even the caucus process is up for,
Right.
uh in fact, I'm going to say that there's a very strong movement, and, the people that are behind this movement, just let me just editorialize, since I know who they are, the people that wanna get rid of this process of caucus where citizens can join by going to their neighborhood meetings. That'll be February 2026. In fact, I call my twice monthly meetings Caucus Counter-Attack so that citizens can get involved in the process. Because these people see us coming, people like me, and I'm not against anybody. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you come to my meeting and you're a leftist, I'll help you get involved in the Democrat Party. If you come to my meeting and you're a Nikki Haley Republican, I'm not going to tell you don't get involved in the Republican Party. I'm going to tell you get involved in the Republican Party if that's what you want to do, and then let the people vote to decide because there is a voting process. That's the Democrat side of our republic. We do vote about what's going to happen. We have votes in the party. I think that's great. I don't mind. You're talking about iron sharpens iron. I 100% agree with that. And I'm going to tell you, if you're listening to me and you don't like me, that's because you lied and I called you out. The people that I disagree with, I don't want to trash anybody I mean, disagreement's great. We're not s I mean, I'm not a dictator or a wannabe dictator, and I'm not an ideologue. I'm looking for what works. But how can we make what works and that's what you're talking about disingenuous. You want people to be honest about what they're doing here.
Well, if all of the House of Representatives and all of the senators sought the endorsement, they saw value in it. Otherwise, why wouldn't you go straight to primary? But now when you look at one and say, "Well, it's good enough for me. It's good enough for me as a rep to get the endorsement, but we're not gonna respect it somewhere else,
Or we wanna end the
or
process.
we wanna end the process."
Those people are not in the so-called MAGA movement. The people that wanna end this process of citizen involvement through caucus and bring it all straight to primary are the people that are trying to, in my opinion, tell me if you agree, aren't they the ones trying to blunt this citizens movement is growing throughout the country?
Um, I don't know that for sure, but I would say that if there are incumbents in the House and the Senate that don't believe that we should have the endorsement process or get rid of it, then next time around, don't seek the endorsement. Go straight to primary.
As an elected official.
Yeah.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Well, yeah, if this system is good enough for everyone else, then set the example.
Isn't there legislation banging around in there that hasn't been passed yet that will end this caucus system?
There was some talk about it last session, and I think that got dropped relatively quick.
You know
Um,
why it got dropped?
I don't know for sure.
I do. because some people like me stood up and said, if you do this, we're going to fry you you're going to be like bacon in a pan. And I know I'm going to be nice. These are colleagues of yours, so I'm not going to call them out. But they know I know who they are because they heard from me. Because I want the citizens to be involved in the political process because we're a self-governing republic.
This is what we're supposed to do, is get the people involved. This is our job as representatives and
Oh,
senators, is to pull in more people.
when is the last time you went to a group of House members or House and Senate members together, standing in front of a crowd of folks, and one after another, they stood up there and said, "We welcome you into the party process." Have you ever heard that? You're starting to smile.
Well, I'm running through all the events in my head, and we don't do a very good job at all
Well, could I
of
ask you,
trying to pull
sir,
people in.
can I ask you to become a tireless recruiter for citizen involvement and self-governance? I'm requesting it.
I have offered even to talk at BPOUs in groups across the state. Um, I want to see our party succeed. I want to see more people get involved. Let's have those conversations, town halls, whatever it takes to get more people showing up to be delegates. I think it takes, our state is mixed between that rural and metro, but it's going to take all voices basically to get a statewide candidate across the finish line. We want people out here in greater Minnesota to say, I like this candidate. And you also need the people in the metro to say the same thing. But that means we also need to conversate back and forth. And that's why I like coming down here. I mean, this is the metro. This is not my backyard. When people in the metro hear this and say, the comments that you made from the last podcast,
Yeah.
and say, well, this is just this. Well, no, that's not really the case. If we're not having those conversations, then we're never going to bridge that gap. We're never going to bridge that divide.
I
And it
want you
takes
to know.
everybody.
I want you to know I stuck up for you. I just said, no, I
Appreciate
don't
that.
really think it was a conversation about some kind of, well, I'm just going to say it wasn't explicitly said, but it was implied that there was a black-white divide between outstate and metro. And I don't want that to exist either. I think you said something about the working class.
I don't care which color a person is. They can be purple. If you show up and do your job, we don't even have to get along. Why does the skin color matter? I mean, I was such a firm believer in what MLK said. I want to judge a man on the content of his character, not the color of his skin. And yet in our country, what have we done? That diversity, equity, and inclusion has actually ripped our country apart. What has happened, and I thought it got worse under Obama, the divisions, the race divide actually got worse. There's that division that I talked about before that I believe is actually planned to tear our country apart. I don't believe that when you look at the greater Minnesota versus metro, I don't see that as a race issue. I think it's more so it's demographics. I think out in greater Minnesota, we have an aging population. That's bad because our young people are coming down to the metro. But there's a difference when you are surrounded in the metro. They're just
But Representative, let me just say, I understand I'm not mentioning this guy's name. He's prominent, and I do like him, and I want to get together with him. We haven't met personally. His comments, and I'm just going to say from my own personal anecdotal experiences here in the Republican Party of Minnesota, his comments are not totally unfounded. See, I was defending you as my guest because I could read you. I mean, the way I was, you're in a personal interaction with someone. Yeah, I didn't really get that we were talking about some kind of idealized kind of white utopia. I didn't get that. We were talking about the beauties of the natural life outstate close to nature. That to me was not some kind of dog whistle for racism. But I will also say, because it's been my misfortune of being in rooms with people who have been very racist and are in the Republican Party and very anti Semitic, and they are in the Republican Party. And I said this a lot earlier in my podcast. What is this, episode 232?
Yep.
Downstream or upstream, maybe, I was saying, episode 100, 150. I haven't said it for a long time, but if you're a racist or an anti Semite, the American Nazi Party is right down the block. Go join it. Get out of the Republican Party because the Republican Party is based on human freedom. It's the party of human freedom and human well-being. We can't have racism and anti-Semitism. So there in our party, I don't want that. And the reason why I think there are people there's two reasons. We learned this from candidate Laverne Turner, who is an African American, said, hey, nobody shows up from the Republican Party in Minneapolis. There's no presence. Nobody ever. I mean, he said it was zero. He said if nobody shows up from the Republicans, then who's going to show up as the Democrats? He said the people in the community know the Democrats are no good, but nobody even shows up from the Republican Party. That's the A, and the B is the people in that community know that there's racism in this state. They know it. And we have to work, I think, tirelessly as party participants to overcome, it's kind of an overcoming in a way, some baggage that it does exist, I think, in our party. And I'm going to tell you, I've heard it with my own ears. So, and I'm not talking about the anti-Semitic part. I'm talking about the racist part. I've heard it. And what you're saying is you also reject it.
I look at our Republican Party was started anti-slavery. I mean, the premise of the party was anti-slavery. 1850s in
1854, I think.
54
Yeah.
in Wisconsin. That's where the Republican Party started, and it was anti-slavery. If you look at real racism, the Democrat Party has fostered it for years. The KKK was Democrat wing of the party. I mean, it was, which president was it? 1912, somewhere in there. Wilson had it at the Capitol, The Birth of a Nation, I think is what the movie was.
He played the movie, yep.
Right.
For sure.
That was a racist movie.
But let me also say the roots of the Republican Party, which is the Whigs, they had a Antifa of their own called the Know Nothings, and that was a virulently anti-Catholic, anti-immigration wing, and there's a great movie about it. Martin Scorsese, a great director, love his work. The Gangs of New York with Daniel Day-Lewis and Liam Neeson documents that it's a historical movie. I mean, so we can't get away from collectively, historically, from some of these very unfortunate, which we see it today. It's in our politics today. It has, but I was defending you. I'm just going to say on a personal basis, I have the sense that that's not who you are.
Well, I appreciate that. And I don't think that the divide between the metro and urban is race at all.
You don't?
I don't.
What do you think it is?
Well, I think when it comes to the metro, I think it's more of a socialist environment. When you're out in the rural area, you've got your own sewer, and there's a sense of independence. You've got self-sufficiency that you've got to look at. It is not the same. You've guys got snow removal here that takes care of things. You have to do that for yourself. I think it almost is a socialist mindset. When you flip the switch, somebody's going to be taking care of that stuff for you.
That's so interesting. I like that. What you're saying is where you live, you're not hooked up to the city. You're self-governing.
Right.
But when we're living in the city, we're on the city, for lack of a better way of saying it, we're on the crack of communalism, of socialism.
It's basically the gateway, if you really want to put it that way.
This goes back to Walz talking about our neighbors.
Well, the more things that the metro provides to the citizens, the less they have to do for themselves. Or you don't have that out in rural Minnesota. You don't have that out in rural areas.
How
Even
many police work in your area? How many police? You know them. How many people are there?
so we were just talking about this the other day. Most of the small towns in my area don't have a police force. They don't. It is patrolled by the county.
County
So
sheriff, that would
county
be?
sheriff,
Okay.
yes. So our county, if you drove from one end to the other, it is um it's well over an hour because it's about an hour up to Wadena. So if I get to the bottom, it's probably 70 miles from one end to the other.
East to west, north to south.
It's a rectangle. I'd say it's probably an hour and a half north to south, hour wide.
Okay, so you got 90 miles north south, 60 miles east west.
Yeah.
Pretty big area.
Right. And
How
the
many
county
and
sheriff
how many
covers
how many people are patrolling this area?
I think there's 20 some on the sheriff's department, if I remember the numbers
And
right.
this was part of the conversation I had with this gentleman because he was saying, well, let's not make there's crime. He goes, because you were saying it's very bucolic. There's not that much crime. He's like, come on. There's crime. He's just not talking about it. And I'm saying, well, is there crime?
When was the last time we had a murder? If there is a murder in our area, it's big news. It never happens. I can think of in my lifetime probably maybe 5 instances. There was
You're going to start naming them by names here.
I was thinking about that, but no, we just don't see it.
But
We don't
I
see
grew up in Highland Park in St. Paul, the wrong side of the tracks in Highland Park, for those of you who know the neighborhood. And back in the 60s, there was no murders in St. Paul. I mean, very, very little. I mean, I can also remember the notorious cases back in the 60s and 70s. But not to get into the weeds, my point, what I'm trying to drive at here is you have to be into your own self-defense up there because you call the sheriff, by the time they get there, whatever's going on, it's over. Right? True statement?
That's a true statement. I would say that even we are, if there's a patrol that's close and you make a phone call, they could be there, within a very short time. Um, with the shooting of the Hortmans, I called because I was not home. I called back to the house, didn't get an answer. So I called our local sheriff and he said, I'll be there in 15 minutes. Find out later he was still at home. So for him to get dressed in his squad car and over to my place, he he really had to boogie to get over there. But that's 15 minutes. What is the response time here in the metro? I couldn't tell you. Um, but the point being, they got there as quick as they could. If I just, we don't have the same amount of crime. The environment is different, and maybe we're getting off on a tangent here that we don't need to go down.
No, I
But
think I
but
think I
even
think it's good because I'm throwing you a curveball, but I'm telling you the feedback from the first podcast, and I'm delving into what the issues were and what I'm pressing you to say. Well, how much crime really is there in your backyard? And what I'm hearing you say is not too much.
there isn't. We see the drug issues. I mean, I admitted that before, but you have to go looking for it in order to see it. You don't. It's not prevalent. It's not like if you ride on the train and you see needles on the ground or on the floor, you know, it's not like that. Okay. There's something that has always kind of amazed me. And when I went out to Sturgis the first time, Sturgis is a crowded place
For the motorcycle
for the
rally.
motorcycles. Yep. And you bump into somebody out there and you both turn and say, "Oh, excuse me," or "Sorry." That actually shocked me. I did not think or expect that at Sturgis. But the people that are out there tend to be a little bit older now. I mean, years ago it was a little bit more wild crew, but it's gotten
Commercialized.
it's gotten commercialized. It
Okay.
has.
Yes.
So I was thinking about that one time and I thought, what about my own town? I mean, if you're walking down the sidewalk, there's a group of people, you get out of each other's way, you make eye contact generally, and you say, morning, or how's it going, even if you don't know them. Down here in the metro, that very rarely happens. I when I say it's different, I just think it is. I think there's a little bit more humanity there.
Maybe there's more fear here in the I don't know that I would agree with that there's more humanity. There's probably more fear. There's fear of making eye contact because eye contact can lead to confrontation, which is not going to happen. We have a
See, and
very
I look at that as a way of respect. When I see somebody, I nod and you say hi. That's just the way it is. So, do we lose a little bit of our humanity then if that's based on fear and we can't acknowledge someone?
I don't know that we lose our humanity, but we definitely lose our ability to build community.
Mm.
Fear creates the conditions where we can't bond. So this goes back to the Waltz piece.
Yeah.
When you create that kind of division, that kind of fear, calling an elected president a thing and calling his policies fascist, you're creating fear. And that's creating the kind of division that's an not intra-party, it's inter-party. It's creating two different camps. And we're talking about being ruled, being divided so we can be ruled. Well, hey, you know what? Uh, there's no purchase on this just on the left. This is politics, right?
Yeah, and that's we do absolutely have to look at our side as well and say, are we holding the moral high ground?
And let me just say for the people that are going to listen to you that have this judgment against me because I'm critical of Republican Party politicians. Hey, you know, the Democrats got to take care of their own. I'm a Republican. They're not going to listen to me over there if I throw comments at them, but I am listened to on this side of the football because we got to take care of our own house, pull out the log in our own eye before we move forward because these people aren't kidding around and we don't have it together on our side of the football.
So I think that's a great point, and I'm glad you bring this up because it's very easy to complain about everything in politics or in our society or whatever. But what are we going to do to make it better? So we started off talking about the Republicans, and maybe we've got to go back to that in the inter-party conflict. We know it's there. We know there's division. We know there's different groups, whatever you want to call it. So then how do we make the situation better? As elected officials, I think we need to set the example. I think we need to talk about those things. And that's why when it comes to the endorsement, um, that's one of the reasons is I didn't become a delegate. You see a lot of reps, senators who are delegates. I think it's an incestuous relationship if you are elected and then you also get to dictate how the party is functioning. I think that's a bad
We got a lot of
precedent
that
to set.
going on throughout the state, do we not, sir?
We do, and many people have said, "Mike, you know what? You need to be a delegate so that your voice is heard." No, I don't think I do. If people want my opinion, I am more than happy to share it. But to dictate how the party is functioning and how it's operating, like I said, this is an incestuous relationship. If the party is going to protect their incumbents, well, then I'm voting for my own protection
What
by
about
becoming a delegate.
what about party leadership that works on the payroll of incumbents?
You could very easily say that's a conflict. Um, what role could they play? Because I've thought about this as well. There are people who work for the congressional candidates. What party could they play? Can they still offer something without being, CD chairs or whatever? I don't know. I've looked at that and thought about that quite a bit because we want those people involved. I mean, we want to pull more people in. Just because you work for a congressional candidate shouldn't exclude you from doing anything inside the party. They're very well organized. They have some expertise when it comes to running congressional races and so forth. But what role can or should they play? There's some people that say, nope, they can't hold any offices. Um, I don't know if I agree with that entirely because I think we should actually be helping each other out, I feel, from the congressional races all the way down. I look at it when we put up signs why aren't we putting up all of our signs together?
Oh, I know the answer to that. Oh, sorry. I mean, you can't cue me up that's just such a setup, okay? I mean, in the last cycle, I was involved with the Royce White for Senate campaign. And I do know what happened right in SD 45, where I was on the BPOU, and the candidate, Kathy Folk, refused to even appear at the same event with Royce White. And I actually viewed, I mean, this is, again, this is hearsay from me to you, but if not for me, which was, I had heard Jim Nash tell the House candidates not to appear in any pictures with Royce White. And Royce confronted him at the Carver County Convention, and Jim Nash said, I might have said that. So, when we have this kind of thing, this is what breaks down this MAGA group and sends them off into uh, kind of a radical kind of opposition to the people that you have to work with every day. You're taking a position, I think, if I'm right, that we have to find a way to work together. Am I correct in
It,
interpreting you that way?
am I going to like all of the candidates statewide or congressional or whatever? But we're all still Republicans, right? When we talked about unity before, there is a certain level of unity that we have to have. Will I agree with everyone that is a candidate? No, I probably won't. Do I agree with everyone who's in the House? No, I probably won't. Or the Senate. We're all individuals. We all have a different viewpoint on some of this stuff. At the same time, isn't our bigger, I was going to say adversary, maybe that's not the right term, opponent, isn't that the Democrats? I would, looking at other people that I disagree with inside the party, there's some things I can live with and some things I can't. I am extremely pro-life. I'm extremely Second Amendment supporter. Um, those two things, I don't think that we can give anything. But there's other stuff that I look at as far as the candidates and so forth and say, I can leave that on the table for now because the bigger picture here is we have to win the state. Whether I like this candidate or not, it's kind of irrelevant to me in some of these situations because we saw what happened under the trifecta. We saw what the Democrats did. I want to make sure that we win this state, but then we also have a plan. So this comes back to we can complain about stuff all we want, but we have to have some solutions. And what are we going to do when we win statewide races? When we have a Republican governor?
That's a very good question. What are we going to do?
Well, that comes back to the planning that we started.
Which you said, to your knowledge, does not exist.
That's right.
I'm going to disagree with you.
You think we have a plan?
I think there is a plan. It just doesn't include you.
Huh.
I think there is a plan. I think there is a center of NGOs and organizations, incubators of ideas. Economic Club of Minnesota might be one. There's many NGOs that do it. We have a broad bipartisan participation in those organizations, and those organizations have a view of how Minnesota needs to function from a political economy perspective. So, you talked about life and 2A, which I have to tell you here in CD3 where I live, the hierarchy of our party here in CD3 is interested in watering down the life part of our platform. And I had Randy Sutter, who ran CD3 until very recently, personally tell me, hearsay again for you, that if we're going to win here in CD3, we're going to have to give up our gun rights. So, okay. But there's other issues because we have a modern Republican Party. It's changing. It has a certain set of ideals now about economic nationalism, for example, the working class, for example. We don't have agreement in the party, in my opinion, about who our customer is in the electorate. We have people that will talk one game to get the vote, but if they won, that party platform doesn't mean that much to them. They're working for other folks. That's my opinion. And I plan to prove this on subsequent podcasts because here's my thing. You're talking about unity. I'm all for it. If we don't have honesty, we can't unify. If people don't tell me who they are, like you can't spend your life doing this and then say you're that. I just don't believe you. It's like to pick on somebody. Adam Schwartzy. Adam Schwartzy's running for Senate. Great. You ran for Senate as an America Firster. I'm listening to what you're saying. Yet you don't take, responsibility for being part of Nikki Haley's campaign, who's not America Firster. How do you square that circle? The only way to square it is like this. Like I'm going to square my own. I voted for George W. Bush. I did. I thought his father, George H.W. Bush, was my favorite president until I figured out who these people were. So I honestly say I was a globalist in my Republican orientation, and I had some kind of epiphany along the road and changed my politics. I take ownership of my political past. And I haven't seen, for example, Adam Schwartzy do that, where he's embraced. Because I'm all for change. We got to convert people, right? But let's be honest about it. If we're not honest, how can we trust? So when we talk about unity, I want there to be a fundamental Republican unity, like George Washington couldn't tell a lie, honest Abe Lincoln, honest Mike Wiener, honest whoever, so we at least can have a realistic dialogue. Am I wrong about that?
We all make mistakes. We all fall short. We are all fallen creatures. So what you said about the Bushes, and liking them as presidents, you saw something that appealed to you, something that worked for you, and then new information came to light.
Did you vote for George W. Bush?
Yeah.
Did you like him?
I didn't vote for Reagan, but I liked Reagan more. But yes, I voted for the Bushes at the time.
Okay, my point is this. You also saw something you liked, and I'm going to articulate it. I believed in Pax Americana. I believed in free trade. I believed in the far-flung deployment of our military forces throughout the world to defend our free trade architecture. I believed in it. And then somewhere along the line, in the early 2000s, I started looking at my cities, my inner cities, the people out in your backyard who lost their job because the manufacturing plant closed down. You got that in your backyard, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I started looking at all this dislocation because of free trade. And then I started to study the relationship between free trade and one world governance. I said, whoa, stop right there. I'm getting scammed with this free trade thing. Sounds so nice, free trade. Free is free. Free?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not free. It has a cost. What are the costs? Oh, the costs are my freedom. Okay, I changed. I just walked you through my own personal becoming. So when we have people in the party that haven't taken that trip, they're not really in harmony with where our party is alleged to be. That's the disagreement in the party, in my opinion.
So then isn't it yours and my responsibilities to educate?
I will go with you anytime you invite me to sit on a stage with you, with any group of people. I'll sit there with a microphone and we can go over it, jot tittle back to those Greek philosophers you like to talk about, because I like to talk about them too.
When we saw manufacturing leave our country, it was horrible. When that free trade, which was supposed to be so good, and we lost the power, what made us the superpower that we were? It was manufacturing and cheap energy during World War II.
Independence, self-sufficiency,
That's right.
self-governance. Like your house is not hooked up to the city. You're a 2A guy. You're taking care of yourself. You grew up in the country.
Well, our country was built on that. It's ingrained in our human nature. Man is supposed to build. It's supposed to produce. When we lost that, when we became a service economy, we lost a huge part of who we are. And we shipped that off for profits. The profits never came back to the working class. And we don't bat an eye when we shut down factories around here. But if a service industry shuts down, it seems like it's the end of the world. I don't get that. You have our economy, our middle class is or our economy is based on that middle class, basically. And we keep taxing, we keep acting like they're still there. They're simply not. The middle class has shrunk to next to nothing. COVID eliminated even more because what did we do? We shut down small businesses. And the easiest way to jump from lower tax bracket to the next tax bracket is business ownership. Whether it's a small bar, gas station, some of these entities, you have equity that you're building into. And we killed small businesses during COVID. Biggest transfer of wealth that they say was during COVID.
Well, when you say wasn't
We.
really we.
Wasn't we?
It wasn't, but that's a very important thing, I think, for the citizens that are listening to understand this. You know, we have a collective political will, but there are people that have a disproportionate influence within that will, and they buy that influence, and the people that they buy are sometimes your colleagues. Is that a true statement? Are you gonna be okay with me saying that?
Er, I would say as representatives, we come from a different viewpoint on a lot of different things. Um, w- are some of my colleagues as um, in tune to some of this as I am? Probably not. Probably not. And it's easy to overlook some of these things. When you're in the position, you're bombarded with a lot of things. And I think the longer we're in these positions, probably the worse it is. Um,
Is that an argument for term limits?
I actually used to be against term limits because I said we have a system in place, vote them out. If you don't like them, vote them out. This is my second term, and I'm thinking maybe we need term limits. And it's not for probably the reasons you're thinking. When we stack the deck against anybody that challenges an incumbent, then do we really have an honest election anymore? Say somebody were to challenge um, even Walz right now in his own party. Do you think he's going to get an honest uh, opportunity to go against Walz?
I'm not trying to drag you into the weeds because everything has a polarity. So on the one hand, we're saying you want the party process to be honored. And the other hand, you're saying the party process stacks the deck against people that come out from the outside. I'm not trying to say that you're wrong in having both ideas. Both it's a continuum, like a yin yang. Both ideas are viable ideas. The issue becomes who's running things. See,
Well,
this is, again, I want to say it's not about the process sometimes. It's about the people who are in charge of the process.
so maybe the Walz comparison was bad, and let's we had incumbents that were running for House, went to the endorsement, did not get their endorsement. Okay, and then it goes to primary. They go to primary. I looked at that and I said, why, especially if these are red districts, why are we worried about this? The game changes, players change all the time. Why wouldn't we, if we have the opportunity, why wouldn't we embrace new people coming in? But there was a lot of money spent on those incumbents in districts that were 70%. Now, do you lose some expertise? Do you lose some institutional knowledge
Yeah.
by getting rid of incumbents? Yes, you do. Absolutely. And one of the candidates that was going to run, because I met both of them that were challenging incumbents in the House. And the one candidate, I said, you know what, we would have actually probably go backwards because this person that you're challenging is a chair. He's very knowledgeable when it comes to the committee he's in. And I've seen him do things that it'd be very tough for anybody else to duplicate because of his expertise in this field. So we would lose something. when you challenge incumbents. But at the same time, when we're so willing to spend money on some of these on incumbents every time they're challenged, then do you have an honest shake at free and fair elections? You see what I'm saying?
Of course, I mean, this is the we've been dancing around this for now over an hour and a half, and the dance is what's going on in the party, what's going on in the party, and what I'm hearing you say. This is how I hear it. Doesn't mean it's right, mind you. I'm just telling you what I hear. It means that if somebody comes in from the America First movement and challenges an establishment Republican, huge resources will be deployed to stop that Republican from winning, and and then we get this inter party. Uh, I'm just going to say, I mean, I don't know if I'm right or wrong. I'm just in my opinion. The juice to stop this process of moving our party forward is not coming from the so-called MAGA movement. It's coming from the establishment, which is seeking to keep control of party process and party elected officials because it's seeking an outcome, which I'm going to say not right, wrong, or indifferent. This is a guy talking who said, I voted for George W. Bush. You just said, well, people maybe don't understand it quite as good as you do. You're making something, you're saying it in a nice way. I'm going to say it very blunt. These people are globally orientated. We're an ag export state, and they do not want in this state a growing citizens movement of people that are associated with the quote unquote mega movement. And that, we're jammed up here. I mean, we're jammed up in Minnesota because I think what the money thinks, these wealthy donors you're talking about, they just figure they're going to starve the party until the mega movement goes away. And it might go away. But it was the Tea Party first, and then it became the MAGA movement, and then it will become something else because there is just a group of citizens out there that are seeking something different than what the party is selling. That's my opinion.
So define the MAGA movement then.
Well, that's, for me, pretty easy to do, but it seems to be difficult for other people. For me, it has nothing to do, per se, for me personally, with Donald Trump. He is right now the titular head of the movement, but it really is a return to a kind of republicanism, which is much more traditional, going back to 1854, than the current Republican Party in total, in MIN-GOP or the RNC. In this respect, the Republican Party is about human freedom and human well-being. And there are issues that we can unify as Republicans around: economic freedom, religious freedom, food freedom, medical freedom. Those freedoms, we need to unite urban and rural around those issues. It involves, and if you think about this from my perspective, economic freedom. If we're running a worldwide empire, we don't have a border because we're an empire. So it's about having a sovereign border, a sovereign country with uh, more humility about our ambitions as a country, more focused on the well-being of the citizens in your district. And that to me is the MAGA movement.
And this is one thing that I've always had a concern about. I don't like a cult of personality. I don't.
I agree with you about that.
What Trump stands for and those freedoms and stuff, they have to be articulated. For so many people, especially because of the media and so forth, they have looked at MAGA and basically said, it's all Trump. It has to be bigger than Trump. Because when he's gone, what happens then?
Wasn't that my first statement, that this, for me, is not about President Trump? He's the leader of the movement right now.
I understand, but even the video with Walz, he points everything and all the Republicans to Trump. You know what? I need something more than just the president. I need something, a movement has to be bigger than just its leader. What happens when Trump is gone in 3 years?
We're going to have a fight for who's going to lead the movement.
Exactly.
But I'm going to say,
Where is that going to end up?
to me personally, it's very simple. It's about American citizenship. What benefits the value of every citizen's life? Longevity. Let's just start with longevity. What are we doing as a country not to manage disease, but to enhance well-being? That's the MAHA movement. That's what are we doing in your backyard? You live in an rural, what kind of word? A rural ag area. What are we doing to help those farmers in every aspect of their business? so that they're giving us city dwellers food that helps our longevity increase. Things like that. Longevity, freedom, economic freedom. What are we doing to help every citizen be self-determining economically? What do we do? So those are what I hope this movement becomes focused on, not as you said in a cult of personality, because I agree with you. What do you do after the cult? What do you do with the cult after the person's gone?
That's right. And I think that's something that we really have to talk about and discuss, because where do we go from here? When he's gone, where are we going to go? Who's going to take that leadership? And the movement has to be bigger than the person. So you're right. And you keep using one term. I shouldn't say hitting the nail on the head is what I was going to say, is that freedom. We have given up a lot of our freedoms in this country when we have gone to a globalist mentality. And our freedoms come from, you said it also, self-determining. When you are a person who can provide for your family, that house, white picket fence, and a car in the driveway. Well, we've lost those freedoms. We've lost that opportunities because we've sold our country out to globalism when our manufacturing has gone overseas. Most of the woodworking equipment I have in my shop, we bought from companies when all of the, uh, um, I was going to say like Broyhill and Thomas, but some of those wood companies that made dressers and cabinets and
Went out of
everything else,
business.
they went out of business. North Carolina was a huge hub for making that type of furniture, and it all went overseas.
And President Trump just this week announced a 50-day process of looking at furniture imports. And all the major furniture distributor stocks went down like 4, 5, 6%, because what he's getting ready to do is erect more protectionist barriers so that people can have jobs in that industry. Mike, thank you. We're running over, and all this does is set up the next get together, because this conversation that we're having, it's a gentle conversation. We're starting to run up against each other a little bit, which is great, respectfully. We're not throwing bricks at each other. And I want to invite you back, and I want to go at you a little bit harder on some of these issues, because you asked the critical question. And I'm going to invite you back, and we're going to, if you'll take the bait, can we talk about what it is to be a Republican?
Sure. The downfall is we had a list of topics we were going to discuss,
Yeah.
and I don't think we had any of them.
Well,
We kind of brushed up against a couple.
we're not going to do that again. Next time it's going to be just completely live and improvisational, because that's what it ends up being. See, I don't want to say I'm tricky, but being a good interviewer, I'm trying to listen to what you're saying, make some points for us to build off of in the next conversation, because we're really come down to what's going on in the party. How do we unify the party? And how can we unify if we don't have a rally point? And what you said was, we don't have a rally point. We've got to develop a rally point for all American citizens. And I don't mean just Republicans. I mean, we need a rally point for America. That's what I'm looking for. And I think it's those freedoms.
So you say America, and I agree, but we have to control the things that we can. And I'll go back to my mom used to have great sayings, sweep your own doorstep. Meaning, when all us boys would get into confrontation, which we usually did, and you'd blame the other person. She said, no. Sweep your own doorstep. What did you do in this situation? Okay. When we're talking about politics, America is too broad. We need to look at what we can change right here in Minnesota, how we can make the situation better, what each of us can do, because you're going to see those things a lot sooner. And when they're successful, then you can broaden it out. I think we need to focus on Minnesota.
I misspoke. And you're setting up my final closing statement for all the Republicans that don't like the fact that I criticize Republicans. I'm sweeping my own doorstep. I want to bring our party into a new kind of real unity, where we have redefined what it is to be a Republican. Because if we don't do that, if we stay where we are, if we don't allow that process of redefinition, we're just going to bust. Because there's some hardcore resistance to what has previously been okay.
Mhm.
You agree with me about that?
I would agree with that.
Okay, on that basis, on that note, I want to thank you for coming in. I want to invite you back because we just can't get through all of it. So you're welcome here. Come back soon. Keep this dialogue going. Any closing comments you'd like to share?
Well, thanks for having me back. Thanks, Tanner, for doing everything you do. You make us look good, and I appreciate this. And I think more conversations need to be had. We need to have those discussions, and people need to hear different views. I have no problem with a little bit of confrontation, but let's figure out where we're going to go. Let's look for something better. We can do better in this state. We can do better as Republicans. Um, and a saying that somebody dropped on me during session is, "I believe in Minnesota and I believe in our people." And I totally agree with that. We can do better. And if we just let the Democrats run this state, we're not going to do any better. If we keep fighting amongst ourselves, we're not going to do any better. So we've got a lot of work to do.
Thanks for coming in. Look forward to seeing you soon again. Tanner, thank
Thank you.
you.
Of course. Have a good night, everybody.